I'm Pete the Planner, and this is the $1 Million Plan. How are we going to get you to become a millionaire? I know it sounds nuts, but the goal here on this particular show is to make sure that we can get you to be a millionaire with your habits and your decisions and your purchases and the things you don't purchase. That's what we do. This week, I'm actually recording this show. So if you want to see, you can go to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Pete the Planner. So I'm recording it, of course, audibly and video. So hello if you're watching the video. This week, we attack one particular aspect of being a millionaire, and that is relationships. Oh yes, hugging aggressively. Relationships and how you deal with your money in relationships, it's a very important topic. And I will say I've become sort of an amateur marriage counselor over the years, inadvertently. Now, part of what I have done is I talk to people about their financial lives. And whether that's individually or as a couple, inevitably it gets back to the relationship at heart. What is the relationship that is supporting the financial relationship? Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes people scream, sometimes people cry, a lot of finger pointing. So this week I want to dig deep into different aspects of our relationships in regards to money, and specifically a romantic relationship. It doesn't even have to be that romantic, arguably. Maybe someone is not romantic, but you're in a relationship with them and you share money with them. I don't mean, what I'm saying is not your kids or your parents or anything like that. This is about you and your significant other. Maybe that's the best way to say it. We won't get caught up in the term partner or spouse or whatever. Everything I'm talking about this week is significant other, and it begins with a very elementary concept. You have different views on money than your significant other. If you didn't, that means you were probably raised by the same people. And if you were raised by the same people, that's awkward. I mean, kinda, right? You know what that means. You are who you are in regards to your decision making and how you view resources, including money and time, because of whoever raised you ingrained those thoughts into your mind. I happen to think that is what makes marriage or relationships so difficult from a financial perspective, is the idea that so many of your ingrained thoughts about money aren't your doing. You know, they were delivered to you by someone else. So then you find yourself in a relationship. You are the way you are because of how you were raised, and the other person is inherently different. And then that's where the conflict arises. So what you get to do is you get to pick apart and decide who's right and who's wrong. I mean, you are objectively saying, you know, the way you were raised doesn't actually make any sense. And I see that one all the time. Well, hey, my parents, they were in deep credit card debt, and so it's okay for us to have credit card debt. And then the other person has to stand up and say, no, actually, that's a terrible way to live. And if you look at your parents now as seniors, you will most likely agree we don't want that path. So that's the strange part about sharing money with someone, is that the very first part of the discussion of how are we going to run our financial lives, you're kind of assigning blame to your parents. Yeah. Makes for an awkward conversation. Think about all the first dates and things you've had in your life. You know, what are the awkward conversations? It never gets to what did your parents do wrong about teaching you things about money. It never got there, good, bad, or otherwise. So are you working together or are you working against each other is a big part of this too. Because for a lot of folks, what happens is someone takes the reins of the financial situation and says, you know what, I'm going to do the budgeting because you're bad at it, or I'm going to do the investing because you don't care. And when that happens, what ends up happening is the other person is, the person that's not involved abandons the person that's got all this financial responsibility. Now, I've seen situations in which the one-person model works, where one person's responsible and the other person is sort of a hands-off financial entity. I've seen it where it works. But anecdotally, I'll tell you, it doesn't work. It does not work in the long run, because you've got, no matter how many earners you have, you've got one person being responsible and the other person being really passive. If we want to go back to the idea of resources, we have some economic resources that help us do the things we do on a regular basis. I was explaining this to my daughter the other day on the way to gymnastics. Mommy and I, that's just what I was saying to her. I'm not calling my wife mommy to you. That'd be weird. Although I'll tell you, my wife and I were on a date once. This is after just like a flurry of parenting. And my wife went off to the restroom or something, and the server came around and asked what we wanted to drink. And I said, I'll have a beer, and I'm not sure what mommy wants. And I caught it was awful. It was an awful moment. But anyway, so I was telling my daughter, mommy and I only have so much money to make decisions. That's why we buy certain things, we don't buy other things. And my daughter actually related. She said she had a friend who is moving here soon, and he told her, she's in first grade and so is her friend, he told her that his mommy, daddy said they can't go on as many vacations once they move because they'll be spending more money. See, that's the concept of resources. So what we want to know is if one person alone is making those decisions, that's really hard and, in my opinion, the wrong way to go. As I've told you in previous episodes of this show, I do think that you need to have regular conversations with your significant other. We'll get to that a little bit later on in the program. I think once a month is the proper amount of time to talk to each other about money. Beyond that, it gets a little tedious. Less than that, you're not going to get anything accomplished. So are you working together or are you working against each other? Now this is tough. Now there's some strange elements here, right? A lot of it has to do with, are there two incomes? Does one person make significantly more than the other person? And if that's the case, gender even comes into play, depending on the makeup of your relationship. What I have seen, this is not scientific, if it is a male-female relationship and the female makes significantly more than the male, what I have seen culturally is there can often be some really weird things going on. As you know, there's nothing wrong with a female making more than a male at all. But I will say, from a dynamic relationship or dynamic perspective of the relationship, it's significant. Some weird things can happen because we've been socialized to think that men make more than women. Good, bad, or otherwise, man. We have been socialized. We grew up in a culture in which men made more money than women. And in turn, generally speaking, the person that made more money made more decisions. Don't shoot the messenger here. I'm not saying it should be that way. I'm just saying if you step back, that's the way it generally has been. And so if you take those social norms, although they are not correct objectively, if you take those social norms and flip them on their head where the female in the relationship is making more money, thus there's the struggle of, well, who's making the more of the decisions, you're going to have this inherent conflict. You could deny it. I don't really care because I've been seeing this for 10 years and it's more than 10 years, 18 years. How did I go from doing this for 10 years to 18 years? It just seems like 10 years. It's been 18. I'm an old man. Yeah, it's what happens. Sometimes with relationships, based on who makes more, the relationship can suffer from a financial perspective. Sometimes people think if you make more money, that means you get more votes. I happen to disagree with that. At this point in my relationship, I am the only income earner in my house. That wasn't always the case and will not always be the case. I can assure you, I do not get more votes. Right? It is our money. Which does bring up an interesting point we'll get to here after the break. Separate or joint banking. What do? Do you have a separate checking account from your significant other, or do you have a joint checking account from your significant other? My opinion has changed on this wildly over the years. At first, I felt that you had to have a joint checking account or you did not trust each other. Now I disagree. I'll tell you why after this break. I'm Pete the Planner.